Welcome everyone to Satsang. Today I'd like to speak with you a little bit about dancing with vasanas, dancing with tendencies. For the sage, for the realized one, who knows that they are the self, there are no tendencies. For this reason, for the sage, there is no need to dance with the tendencies of the personal sense of me or mine, or the conditioning that comes along with that. There still can appear to be some sense of the personal or some sense of the ongoing nature of tendencies, even in the sage, but this is from the observer, from the outside, who is interpreting the behavior of the sage according to their own tendencies, in this belief that they have still a personal life. The sage, knowing the universal nature of being consciousness, sees only the self. So when I speak about dancing with tendencies, understand that I'm pointing for you to the true understanding that there is only the self. So you can know right from the beginning that in your own experience, you can say, that whatever you seem to be experiencing in body, mind, or world, in thought, emotion, and so on, can say is nothing more than a tendency, a vasana. Now, when I say it is nothing more than a vasana, I'm not diminishing the experience that you might be having right in this moment. I'm not denying it. I'm not telling you it doesn't exist. What I am telling you, it is momentary. It is momentary. Sri Bhagavan Ramana said, "Let what comes, come, and let what goes, go." So when I point you or make the suggestion, point you toward this concept of dancing with the vasanas, dancing with the tendencies of your own immediacy, your own life in this moment, I am not telling you to deny or repress or suppress. What I am telling you is there is a way in which you can see what is rising. You can see that it lasts for a period of time, and then you can see that it dissolves or falls. This is true of everything, isn't it? Even things which are difficult and which seem to repeat themselves and last a long period of time. So what is this way to dance with the vasanas, to dance with the conditioning, with the tendencies which are arising both naturally, having taken a birth, having a body-mind? You know, some of these vasanas have just come with you when you came. And in fact, they are your ally. You know this because they are the cause of this birth. You are the reason They are the reason you have this body, so that you can do this work, so that you can ask this question, who am I? So we're not using the word vasana or tendency to indicate some problem. They are a natural part of the arising experience of body, mind, and world. The difficulty comes for you when you attach to this sense of me and mine as this body-mind, and that when the vasana arises, when the thought arises, when the emotion arises, when the sensation arises, when a particular experience arises, there isn't a recognition of the vast space of aware being. That's lost temporarily. In Advaita we say it is veiled by the experience of the tendency or the vasana which is present at this moment. And I think all of you have had that experience. If you are sitting here now, you know something of the self, of the real. It's what keeps you coming back to the silence of your own being. It keeps you looking and saying, what is real? What is true in this? Even when you are momentarily distracted by a tendency, by conditioning, and so on. Whether that momentary distraction lasts a moment of time or it lasts weeks at a time, you know in the heart of being that you are, that you will eventually come back to this silence. The difference between the sage and the jiva, which is called realization, is that the sage knows that he or she is the vast space of awareness at all times. The jiva becomes distracted by the arising of attachment to the body-mind, to the belief that I am the body, or I am the mind, or I am somehow the cause of this experience. I am the why of this experience which is happening, is being perceived. The sage knows this is not true, that all is the self, and all is somehow rising and falling as the natural condition of having a body and a mind. The jiva, on the other hand, the individual, becomes trapped in this sense of individuality, in this feeling sense. This is not just a mental sense, this is also a physical feeling sense of me and mine. I am this body. This body is me. And I know this because I feel the physical presence in this body. The misunderstanding and what prevents you from dancing with your own tendencies or with your own conditioning. By dancing, I mean taking them in a little bit more lighthearted way, not believing so seriously that they are a permanent condition. What I mean by this is you are able to see that what is coming is here only temporarily, and it is passing. The way in which we believe that something, this sense of me-ness which is here in the body, is real, is that there is a tendency, based on conditioning, based on education, based on society, based on parental upbringing, and so on, that there is nothing beyond what I can experience here in the body and the mind, that I am only that. And this strongly supports this idea that I am the body, or I am the mind, or I am the thoughts, or I am the experiences which I'm having. The sages tell us, however, that when there's a recognition of the self, that what happens is the dancing that was done before with conditioning dissolves. It doesn't dissolve because the experiences stop, or because the sensations stop in the body, or because the thoughts stop. It dissolves because there's no attention given to it. In other words, there's no evaluation. There is a choiceless awareness that what is here is simply here. It is passing. So it's not denied. It is recognized, however, that it is not the self. It is not the supreme. It is not the real. The self, the supreme, the real is not different from it, because everything has its foundation in the real, in the supreme, in Sat. We come to Satsanga, Sat, the prior condition, that which makes the knowing of any condition, any tendency, or any samskara, and the knowing of liberation possible. Sat, being, consciousness, the self, the real, Brahman, going by all these names, God. The sage knows only one thing. There is only that, and all of this is that. So when you find yourself perhaps struggling with or stuck in the idea, in the notion, in the belief, this is a very deep belief. It's not a surface level thing. That's why it's called conditioning. When you find yourself stuck in the belief that you are something other than the self, other than the real, that there is a separation between this one you call you or me and that which is referred to by the sages. When you believe there is a separation in there, the first step to dancing with these kinds of tendencies is to recognize that is not the real. How do I know that? I know it because this I is aware of it. This I, which is the very first step, if you will, of consciousness into awareness in the waking state, this I knows that observation is happening. I am seeing this. Therefore, as difficult as this may be, as pleasant or unpleasant as this sensation may be, because I am the observer here, I cannot be that. This cannot be the truth. Something is watching here. What is that? So, asking this question, who am I, is really referring to this ability to become firm and stable in the recognition that you are that which is before what is being observed. This recognition allows us to dance with the vasanas because it takes away very, very quickly, with very little practice, over only a few days, weeks, or months, it takes away this tendency as soon as some experience rises in the body, mind, or world. It takes away this tendency in conditioning to dive into the experience, the sensation, and so on, the thought, the feeling, and to say, this is what I am. This is who I am. It undermines and undercuts this tendency. Having undercut this particular tendency, all other tendencies are allowed to dissolve. So I encourage you to continue each time you see yourself believing in some way that you are an experience in body, mind, or world, to remind yourself the simple remembrance I am not that. If you do this over a relatively short period of time, you will find that the question, who am I, which Bhagavan Ramana suggested, rises quite naturally. But this question seldom arises if there isn't first this recognition that whatever is here in awareness at this moment, that I am not. Without this recognition that this is a tendency, a conditioning, a vasana, the question, who am I, makes little or no sense. The reason is the identification has already gone out into the I am the body idea. I am the mind idea. I am these experiences. So your task is to very gently but persistently and consistently to withdraw attention from whatever appears to be present at this moment in favor of the recognition that I exist. And then you have the foundation for asking the question, and who am I? Then you can ask, who is hearing? Who is seeing? Who is touching? Who is smelling? Who is thinking? Who is meditating? Who is walking? Who is driving? Who is hearing? This is the foundation that you can stand on and dance with the vasanas and dance with the tendencies. And it becomes possible for you to see that they are much less a problem than you thought they were. That the thought that they are a problem can be cut. And then you are here as being consciousness, that which is aware, able to open the heart and the mind and allow everything to rise and fall as though it's naturally being breathed, because it is. It's being breathed by that which you are, by life itself. Not by me, not by you, not by she, not by he, not by them. It is simply being breathed. It is life itself. And there is a natural dance which is going on. Now you are dancing in the self, not dancing with the tendencies.
Do have not a question.
A statement, whatever. Please.
Statement. I agree. Oh.
Yes, this is being recorded.
Oh, recording. Okay. I'm Pujan. Nice to meet you. Before really watching samskaras, vasanas, in my own experience, in my experience with working with people, first a cleaning up or a maturing or if some form of therapy has to happen. Otherwise, the danger of a spiritual bypassing can be huge.
Yes.
So would you agree with that? Before sort of just watching vasanas arising, underneath there could be a very helpful message for first looking at your personality, your persona, rather than bypassing it.
I would say, yes, you are correct in the concern, let's say, about spiritual bypassing. We see this happens a lot. I think the place I would take exception with your comment is that you said first we have to do some therapy.
Okay, well, was maybe not nicely put, but I can articulate, but you know what I mean. You know
yes, and so what I want to point at is whether you have come to this room via therapy, you have come via another form of meditation practice, you have come from Buddhism, you have come from Zen, you have come from something else. However you got here, the assumption in this room is that you have done what he is pointing at. Otherwise, you could not be sitting here. So, what we're pointing at here is how do we go beyond therapy? How do we go beyond the traditions? The traditions are wonderful. Whatever has brought us to this moment of recognition, all is appropriate for you. There are as many paths as there are individuals. So whatever path has brought you here, we honor that. We know that in some way we can say that path has worked. And the reason we know that is we are here. We are hearing this conversation. So whatever path has brought you here, however you have walked it, praise God. We also know that there is a moment in which we have to seriously consider, is it possible, just possible, to end our seeking and to simply be and allow what is here in the experience itself to become the teacher in this moment. Now, having said that, understand that what we are really talking about is a method we call inquiry, which in some ways requires us to be ready for, which is all the previous activity, to be ready for this question, who am I? What I mean by ready for this question, who am I, is there has to be a willingness, not that you do it perfectly in every moment, but there has to be a willingness to set down the past and to set down the future projection in favor of this moment of aware consciousness here now, which has, in effect, in this moment, if it's truly put down, no past and no future, so that what is here now can inform you and bring you into the recognition that what is being here, what is brought here in this experience of being consciousness on the personal level is the primary teacher or the primary motivator at this moment. Okay? When you are ready to ask this question, who am I? You are also ready to ask the question, who is the meditator? Who is the seeker? Who is this perception of me-ness? In order to do that at a very deep level, you will necessarily need to suspend everything that came before and everything that came after in favor of saying, show me what is real here now. Yes, that was the past. We acknowledge it. I'm not interested in a fantasy that I create for myself for some future me. What is here now? What is real? What happens if the mind does not evaluate, does not control, does not seek? What happens then? If this mind is allowed to simply dissolve or come to a complete stop, does this perception of existence stop or does it continue? And if it continues, what is that? This is the foundation of inquiry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The mind has a quandary. What is the role of prayer in the advaita path, both who is the one praying to whom, and if all is as it should be, what is the purpose of any prayer? Is it only to satisfy the mind that is in the dualistic nature?
It depends on the nature of the prayer, I can say. If you are using the I, me sense, I am praying to, right? This kind of intercessory kind of prayer, then it is definitely happening in the mind. But it is also quite common from one's experience that when the heart is open, aware, presence, that there is a self-radiation which is going on that can also sometimes take the form of prayer, in the sense that if one hears that there is someone is ill, someone is in hospital, something like that. Now this is of course true all over. There's always someone ill, there's always someone in hospital. So this goes from the personal also to the universal. Then this burst of self-radiance or love can go out as well in the form of what might be called prayer, but maybe is a wordless form of prayer. So I think I would like you to just understand that you can use everything. So if you have as this tendency, this love for prayer, then look when this tendency is rising, when this movement is happening. Is it coming from here? Is it coming from a self and other, a me and God kind of orientation? Or is it coming from love and compassion for all of life and all beings?
That helps a lot. It also explains, like, when, gurus, sages are like giving a blessing. It's like, well, what is that then? But it sounds like you're saying that is just a natural sort of
that is the
outpouring.
Tendency of love which wants to love. If it is true within that sage, there's just this tendency to radiate. And you can say, well, is he or she doing something? This one says, see only the self, right? There is only the self. If there is only the self, then this one doesn't need to do anything. This one doesn't exist. There is only the self. So this conversation, even in this moment, is happening self to self. Not that there are two selves, but there are two individual natures of the universal self. Now one is speaking to the other.
So then that explains the sense of prayer kind of being a conversation in a way of the self expressing through oneself, through one expression.
Yes, however that
for
manifests,
the other expression.
however that manifests for you. But the deepest prayer, understand, the deepest prayer contains no movement whatsoever. It is simply silence. When we sit together for 45 minutes before we start having a conversation or a dialogue here, that is the deepest prayer. The silence of being is the foundation of all that is. It is the self. It is Sat. It is oneness. If you find that while you're sitting here for that 45 minutes or hour of silence, that the mind is coming and going, it's not a problem. The mind is coming and going. Memories are coming and going. Planning may be coming and going. But if you sit here in the presence of others who are also letting go and also enjoying moments of silence, in the presence of silence itself, the self which you are will be attracted to that silence, not to the tendencies in your mind. They will slow down, they will begin to diminish, they will begin to open, the heart will open, and they will begin to dissolve. Whether this takes a moment for you or it takes many decades, this is just the vasana. It makes no difference. The samskara makes no difference. At the moment of recognition of your own deep silence as the self, you will see that nothing ever happened. No time passed. So just keep coming. Coming to silence, whether you come to silence on your own, at home, or whether you come here because in this environment, somehow the tendencies fall away more quickly. The thoughts are allowed to come and go. This happens just by the natural intention that you have come here and you know that for 2 hours, you're not going anywhere else. This by itself cuts 50% of what's on your mind because you have said, I am here. Okay, so you give up a little bit. You know that you are here. You make a commitment and that is very strong. But what you also do is you give up the idea that if the wrong things happen, you will flee. So you make the commitment to stay in the room, to be with those who are supportive of what your intention is, to realize yourself as a being, consciousness. So you come and you share that energy, you share that space, and you are with someone who can hold that space. So that when you are ready, you fall into it. You rise up into it. You become aware of who you are, even just for a moment. And each moment that you are aware that you are that which is aware here and now in this moment, every time you come back to this remembrance, and it's felt deeply in the heart, you firm the foundation for remaining there beyond all samskaras, all tendencies. You know, we're not here just to pass on information. We're here so that you can feel, understand, and know that you are this silence, that you are the self. This happens most strongly before the words start. The words are always, the concepts are always necessarily a weaker form can say. This is not to say it's small. The conversation is not small. It's simply to say that words and concepts are a weaker form of being, consciousness, and bliss, because that being, consciousness, and bliss is present in deep silence. It is before all else. So, if it is required to rise up in some way in order to be able to be pointed at conceptually, there's the moon. There's the moon. Look at that. This is a concept. There's the moon. So this is what we do during the talking portion. But it is necessarily not always, it can be, but not always as powerful as the silence itself. So you keep coming back to the silence. Whether you are walking down the street, you are sitting in the room here, you are home, you are cooking, whatever you are doing, your laundry, keep referring not to what the activity of the mind is, but what is the activity that is before the mind, or what is the non-activity, maybe is a better way of putting it, before the mind, which is silence itself. I'm not telling you this because it's not something you don't know. You are sitting in this room. So whether you think you know it or not, you intuitively know it. Or you wouldn't be attracted here. So no matter how chaotic you think your thinking is, your experience is, your mind is, that which is aware at your deepest, in your deepest level can say, not really levels, but you get the picture, knows that something else is being suggested for you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If we stay with the topic of praying, if we admit that everybody has to go through his own karma and that everything that is happening is meant to happen, what is the point praying in that case? Or does it really change something?
What is the point of any doing?
Well, most of the time we do because we don't have the choice. We have to do things.
No, we're talking about prayer.
But exactly, but prayers is not an obligation. It's a choice.
It's not an obligation, it's a choice. Exactly, that's what I was hoping you would see.
Yeah.
It's a choice. So is meditation. So is mantra. So is visualization. So is the inquiry. Who am I? What is aware here? Yeah. These are all choices that we are making. Where is the impulse for that coming from?
Well, I guess from the self. Self is, leading me to sit and meditate.
Intuitively knows that it wants to spend a few minutes focused on this rather than blah, blah, blah about the world or the conditions or the circumstances or that person or that experience, right? He wants to spend this time in communion with what at that moment it feels is the gateway to the self. So, this is its only purpose. This is the only purpose of all spiritual practice, is that somehow you, still in the frame of mind of an individual, believe that this is a doorway to the eternal. Because you believe it's a doorway to the eternal, and there's a great deal of tradition behind it, many other people have believed this too, and also realized as a consequence of that belief, then you are able to enter that doorway.
So somehow it's a little bit selfish, because it's as
there is nothing but the self. What do you mean it is a little bit selfish?
Well, because you just said it's a doorway to get closer to the self.
Yes, of course it's a little bit selfish. To want to wake up from the dream is entirely selfish.
Right.
You must have that sense of selfishness in order to ask the question, who is it that's having this experience? Or who is it that meditates? Or, So, we can, I just want to be clear that in the distance between selfish and self is not much. It's a veil. When it's properly understood, what is the motivation for doing this and where is it coming from? We move from the sense of the selfish to the recognition that the self is drawing one in. And this veil evaporates.
Never saw it that way.
Yeah. Understood. This is an important question, by the way, I want to say, because each and every one of you sitting in this room has either thought of yourself at some point on your path as selfish, or felt like your family has told you you are selfish, or your friends have told you you are being selfish. Society has told you, you are not out there being a worker bee, so this means you are being selfish. So it's important that we deal with this whole question of what does it mean to be selfish? And selfish in the sense of I am manipulating and using you in order to obtain power or favor in some way. This is selfish. I am serving you you are serving the Supreme, your only goal in this life is to know who you are and awaken. This is the call of the self. They look side by side, very similar, but to one who knows, the difference dissolves. This is one of the reasons why you hear me say a lot in these meetings, that it's important that you realize that what is here is what you can use from a different perspective or a different understanding. So if you take a concept like selfish and take the societal view of that and understand that you feel within yourself in this moment like you are being selfish because of your sadhana, then you must ask yourself, you can ask yourself, so I have this tendency towards selfishness. How can I use this to awaken? What is the true meaning of this? Is it what I'm being told by family, friends, and society? Or is something else going on here? Show me the real. You see, everything which is your problem is also your solution when asked from the right perspective. So this is why I say over and over, don't make what is here the problem. Ask, how can I use this? Admit its difficulty. Admit the disturbance you're feeling because of it, whether it's an emotional pain, a physical pain, an illness, or whatever, financial pain, whatever it is you're feeling. You're not denying it, but you simply can ask the question, how can I use this? How can this be used for the primary reason that I have taken this body-mind, which is to awaken completely and totally in this moment? How can I use this? And then sit quietly. The answer will come. Why? Because all answers are available in self-knowledge. Whatever you have done to get here, whether you've used a method, a technique, a school of thought, a philosophy, however you have gotten here, that has been the answer at some point